All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Molly Paris. I'm the Assistant Director of Florida Lawyers Assistance. And I have my colleague, Dr. Scott Weinstein, our Clinical Director, here with us as well. And we are going to be doing this webinar for you all. We were hoping to see everybody back in April when Eddie Stevens organized this wonderful seminar for the family law lawyers, and understandably that had to be canceled, and I'm so grateful that we can reschedule it even if it is not in person. So we're going to be talking about mental health and wellness and substance use in the legal profession, and I'm going to get started by talking a little bit about Florida Lawyers Assistance and a bit about some substance use issues, and then I'm going to turn it over to my esteemed colleague, Dr. Weinstein, to talk about stress, mental health, wellness, and ways that we can take care of ourselves in this profession, and especially during these very, very uncertain times. So I'm going to share my screen so you all can follow along with the PowerPoint. I'm also going to provide the PowerPoint to Mr. Stevens so that any of you can have a copy of it as well. So thank you all for attending. I'm sorry we couldn't be together in person, but this is the next, certainly the next best. So to start with, Florida Lawyers Assistance, I'm going to share my screen so we can follow along with the presentation. Okay. Give me a moment. Okay. All right. So stress, mental health, and substance use in the legal community. Florida Lawyers Assistance, many of you, I don't, since I can't see any of you on Zoom or otherwise, I don't know the age of our, or experience of our participants today, but I know you're all Florida attorneys. So at one point you took practicing with professionalism. And during that, it was you know, in our first year or two of practice as Florida attorneys, we have to take this practicing with professionalism course, and it has a series of different 1-hour segments, and Florida Lawyers Assistance generally gets an hour, and you know, get to learn about the Lawyer Assistance Program. However, on that day, there is so much information. Many people, as they go on with their practice and the years go on, don't remember who Florida Lawyers Assistance is at all. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. Florida Lawyers Assistance it's a separate not-for-profit organization, and we are funded by the Florida Bar. And even though we receive our funding from the bar, again, we're a separate entity, and I'll explain the reason why that's so important in a moment. It has to do with confidentiality. And we work with attorneys, Florida attorneys, whether you're in the state or out, law students, and we also work with judges. And we help the legal profession, any member of the legal profession, with issues relating to stress, mental health, wellness, and also substance use. And there are 3 different ways that attorneys, students, applicants, judges come to us, 3 different ways. And the first way that we interact with people, one of the ways, not the first way, and preferably not the only way, is through the discipline system. We work with the Florida Bar. Oftentimes there will be an attorney, for example, who has a substance use or mental health issue that comes up in either a bar complaint, or perhaps they had a criminal case, a DUI, or some other type of criminal issue, and they will get referred to Florida Lawyers Assistance. We will evaluate them, work with them, determine if services are needed. If they're on probation with the bar, we work in conjunction and help to rehabilitate the person so they can be a happy, healthy member of the legal profession. So that's one way we work with people. Another way that we work with people is through the application process, whether it's a law student or an applicant from another state. If you all remember, it's been quite some time I'm a Florida attorney. It's been quite some time since I have filled out the bar application, but on the bar application, there are a couple of questions that have to do with substance use and mental health. And often if those questions trigger a positive response, often the Board of Bar Examiners will send folks to us and say, okay, we have an applicant here. They look like a very promising prospect. However, there's a DUI in the past, or there's a mental health condition that we're concerned about. Please, work with Florida Lawyers Assistance during the application process so that we can see that you are taking care of what you need to take care of, whether if it's a substance use issue, that you're involved in treatment, that you're staying sober, if it's a mental health issue, that you're getting the help that you need. And again, so that's the way that we work with people. Oftentimes sometimes the Board of Bar Examiners will send people to us. Often students and applicants will just come to us voluntarily at the outset and sort of proactively address that issue because they know it's going to be an issue with the Board of Bar Examiners. And the third way that people come to us, and this is our absolute favorite way, and this is why it's so important that Dr. Weinstein and I go out into the community, right now the virtual community, to address folks so that people know that we are here. So we also work with people, as I said, voluntarily. Any attorney, law student, applicant, judge can call us, and it's completely confidential. If you're referred to us one of the first two ways, through the bar or the Board of Bar Examiners, obviously that is not confidential. You're already part of that, either the discipline system or the application system. But what we most like to do, and what we really are trying to stress here, is that people can come to us, can call us, and it's completely confidential. And we have been around, and that's if you take nothing else from this webinar, please remember that Florida Lawyers Assistance is here. We're available to answer the phone. We have groups all over the state, as you'll see in this slide. We have over 300 volunteers. Often those are other attorneys in recovery, and we have groups all over the state. Dr. Weinstein runs some clinical groups himself, and we also can help people refer you to a therapist in your area. We also can provide some support. If it's not something we can handle directly, we can certainly connect people with resources. And that is really, truly what we are trying to encourage, is voluntary participation in our program, because we want to see people before the discipline system, before the DUI, before the hospitalization. We really are trying to help people be proactive and take care of themselves, because this is an incredibly stressful profession. And so that I cannot stress that enough. So as far as how FLA works, as I mentioned before, we have volunteers all over the state. We have groups. We are available to talk to folks. We're also available to do a lot of outreach like we're doing now. Dr. Weinstein and I go to many law firms just to let people know that we are a resource and that we are here. We also work with governmental agencies. We do a lot of work with the Public Defender's Office and prosecutors. These professions that have a really high chance of compassion fatigue and stress. I think every part of and Dr. Weinstein is going to talk a little bit about compassion fatigue. I know primarily in our audience today, we have family lawyers. That is an incredibly, that's a part of our profession that is prone to a lot of this burnout and fatigue. And so it's really important that you all know that we're here. The reason why, when I mentioned in the beginning that FLA is separate from the Florida Bar, is because of confidentiality. In voluntary cases, you can call us, you can contact us and not even give your real name. It doesn't get reported to the bar, to your employer, to the police. It, as you can see, we're folks that call us are protected by both Florida bar rule and Florida statute. So in addition to that, the attorneys that work at Florida Lawyers Assistance, I'll tell you about our structure in a moment, we are exempt from the reporting rule. So if an attorney calls me and reports that they're having an issue with drug use or other, I'm exempt from the reporting rule. Chances are that attorney will have already gotten into some sort of issue and someone else may have reported them to the bar. But as far as the attorneys that work at Florida Lawyers Assistance, we are exempt from the general reporting rules. So that's, again, as I said, one of the most important things that we want people to know is that before you are lawyers, you are human beings. And we're very fortunate now. I believe we have a long way to go, but a lot, one of the big issues that we hear often is stigma. And the Florida Bar has done a tremendous job. The Young Lawyers Division in particular has done some really wonderful work as well. And the bar as a whole, the new bar president has committed, is clearly committed to mental health and wellness. And actually the Florida Bar has a lawyer's helpline that's an additional resource for people. So the bar and our profession as a whole is really starting to talk about these issues more, to talk about, it's okay to get help proactively. It's not a sign of weakness. It's not but we all have a lot of work to do. So I'm going to talk a little bit about substance use in the legal profession, and then I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Weinstein to talk more about mental health and mental health and wellness and stress, and more importantly than telling you about the statistics and how grave it looks in our profession, he's also going to talk about some solutions as well. So very briefly, in 2016, Hazelden and Betty Ford and the American Bar Association did a study on attorneys. And if you can see, these results are pretty staggering. 33% of lawyers are problem drinkers, and particularly in that first decade of practice, 29% of lawyers in the first decade of practice report problem drinking. One of the reasons, this I neglected to mention before, Florida Lawyers Assistance has been around since the 80s, more informally in the 70s, just one lawyer helping another. But the Florida Supreme Court determined that so many of the discipline cases that were coming through had to do with either substance use, mental health, gambling. We'll talk about that in a moment. There are a lot of different ways that addiction can manifest itself. And they found that, and that's when they mandated that an organization be created or that an entity be charged with providing mental health and substance use assistance to lawyers and to our legal community, because so many of these discipline cases had to do with that. And so many folks that end up in the discipline system can in fact be rehabilitated with the proper support. And that's what FLA is here to do. So the definition of alcoholism, alcohol still is the most common drug of choice, if you will, in our profession. And there are many different definitions of alcoholism. So doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, with your drinking, drinking in the face of serious consequences. Those of you, and I know that this comes up, these issues come up often in family law cases as well. I'm sure you're all probably very more versed than you probably ever hoped you would be on some of these issues. And oftentimes we'll see someone with 2, 3, 4 DUIs. A non-alcoholic may get scared enough after the first time to think, I'll never do that again. And the active alcoholic or addicted person may, again, deny, justify, I'll only drink beer, I won't drink the hard stuff, I won't. So there are many ways that alcoholism can manifest itself, and there are many definitions. So these are some warning signs. But before I go on, I want to talk a little bit about my own experience with Florida Lawyers Assistants and how I came to know of this organization and ultimately work here so I can help other attorneys. I'm an attorney. I'm licensed in Illinois, New York, and here, and I practiced law in Illinois for about 8 years, and then I moved to Florida and became a Florida attorney. And while I was in law school in Chicago and after, in addition to in addition to my legal career advancing, so did my alcoholism, and I developed a pretty severe drinking problem, and I don't know when exactly it started. I just know that it did. It was an issue in law school and then early in my practice. And fortunately, I was very fortunate. I did not have any issues with the Illinois bar or with any legal issues related to that. However, I was very slowly killing myself and able to function, able to practice, but just a pretty serious drinking problem. So ultimately I moved to Florida and I decided to get help. And I won't get into all of the details. One of the things that we always want to do too is make sure that people have our contact information if anyone ever wants to speak to me. But I ultimately moved to Florida and then decided to get help. I checked myself into treatment. I got a handle on my alcoholism, and at this juncture I've been sober for over a decade, and it's been extraordinary. But I share this with you because I want you to know about a little context with Florida Lawyers Assistants as well. When I was in treatment, I had already been a practicing attorney for for a number of years. I was really, it was incredibly humbling to be there. I was terrified. I didn't know what happened. I wanted to stay in Florida because I had family here and I wanted to become admitted to the Florida bar. But I knew that would probably become an issue, since I had just been in treatment and I would need to disclose that to the bar. And when I was in treatment, this is again 11 years ago, my counselor there said, don't worry so much. I'm sure you'll still be able to do the profession that you love. And I've been a civil rights lawyer for 20, the past 20 years, and still until I started working at FLA a few years ago. And I'm one of those lawyers that actually love being a lawyer. So the thought of not being able to practice or not getting admitted to the bar here in Florida was pretty troubling to me. And this counselor recommended that I call FLA. So I remember he let me use the phone in his office, and I called, and Michael Cohen answered. He was our former director. He was our director for about 25 years. He was also in recovery. He was an extraordinary attorney and an extraordinary human. And he shared his story with me, and he shared his story about what happened and what it was like for him now. And when he spoke to me and when he shared his own story with me, I felt that was a real turning point for me, not only in my career, but in my life. And that's how I came to know FLA. So I became voluntarily involved with FLA. I had FLA help me with the Florida bar issues that I would have, because of my history of having been in treatment. And, ultimately I also became a Florida lawyer and went on for quite a few years to volunteer for FLA. But I share this with you, not just to out myself for that purpose alone, but to let you know that there's a real face behind what this organization can do. It has helped me tremendously in my recovery and in my life. So I like to share that with folks. So not only do you know that this works, but also so you know that if you or anyone else is struggling, I'm here to talk, and I'm here to support people. So it's important that I share that with all of you. And a few years ago, we realized that not just the substance use issues, but mental health, that FLA really needed to be out there more, hitting the pavement, talking to people, making sure people knew that they could come to us voluntarily, not just through the discipline system or the application system that we are here. And it was at that time that the Florida Bar generously gave us additional funding to hire an outreach person, and so that we could do just that. So a few years ago, I had the opportunity to come and come on with FLA. And it's been great. I enjoy, and this is actually my favorite part of working with FLA is being able to go out and tell people about us and try to get that sort of proactive solution for people, to get people to come to us before the wheels have come off. So a few more things about alcoholism, and then or about substance use, and then I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Weinstein to talk about mental health and wellness and the solution. So these are warning signs. Again, Mr. Stevens, I'm sure will be able to provide this PowerPoint, so you'll all be able to have a copy of it. Other addictions, you can see them listed here. Often people will trade one for another. Often I see people that will have stopped drinking, all of a sudden become compulsive gamblers or have issues with food. Again, there are many ways that addiction can manifest itself in our lives and the lives of our families and our coworkers. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Scott. And as I mentioned before, in addition to this PowerPoint, I will make sure that you all who are participating in this webinar today have our contact information as well. It's at the end of this PowerPoint, so that if anyone should need to reach out to us for any reason, that please do so. It's confidential, it doesn't cost anything, and we are here to help you. So Dr. Weinstein, I turn it over to you. I'm going to give you screen sharing capabilities as well, and also turn off my video so you can have the stage. All right, and so welcome, Dr. Weinstein.
Thank you, Molly, and thank you, Mr. Stevens. And I am glad we've had this opportunity to be here with you, well, sort of virtually anyway. We have been working, our office has been working virtually since the middle of March. So this is something that we've become much more comfortable with, and unfortunately, because of the virus and the pandemic that it's made us a little bit more flexible, but also kind of taken away from the face-to-face connection that we all really love. Let me just get my PowerPoint thing going in the right direction so you all have the right piece. Okay, here we go. Okay, all right. Again, thanks for being here. I'm going to take you on a little bit of a journey in terms of what it means to kind of acknowledge the mental health challenge of individuals. When I first started with FLA about 16 years ago, my colleagues at the office recognized that there was more than substance abuse challenges affecting the profession. And they wanted someone who had an understanding of the whole scope of mental health challenges, and so they were generous enough to hire me. I have come to really enjoy what I do here and really start by what I always do the first time I meet anybody is welcome you back into the human race, because what I found early on in working with attorneys and working in the profession is that somehow the training and the practice of law sort of shuts that part of us off, or at least challenges us to shut that off, and we become more or less programmed to perform and be oriented towards just solutions and really put all the feelings and all our other humanity behind. And as I've watched this happen year after year, I would say 99% of the cases that are referred to us are a result of an emotional challenge to the individual, whether they are being directed here through a discipline matter, or they call up and say, Doc Weinstein, I can't get out of bed. My marriage is falling apart. My practice is falling apart. I don't know what to do. I have clients I'm not responding to. I got a complaint from the bar that I can't open the mail. Um, and I just don't know what to do. I'm reaching out. And that first call to us is an amazing experience for me to know that what courage it takes to do that. So I always acknowledge that when someone reaches out to us and tell them, I commend you on that courage. And the journey of healing together. Molly did a wonderful job talking to you about the substance abuse, or substance use part of our program. And a lot of times they go hand in hand. Many of our clients are struggling with some kind of mental health disorder, whether it be depression, bipolar disorder, very, very acute anxiety, and have found out that if they take a few drinks of alcohol every day or they take some medication, they somehow quiet the demon. So a lot of the individuals come to us with what we call a dual diagnosis. But again, as I view it, it's all an attempt to shut down the pain, the struggle, and the suffering that is happening in an individual's life. Fast forward to now, about 3 months ago, 4 months ago, our country was hit with this pandemic that just threw everything else on its head and just spun us out of control. Dealing with this isolation and dealing with the fact that we are having to radically adjust the way we practice everything from our jobs as lawyers to our family life to our social life has added a challenge that we've never ever experienced as individuals, at least in my lifetime. And so we talk about what a lawyer's world is like. And as you can see on the slide, a lawyer's life is fraught with conflict. And you are charged with helping people. They call you up and say, I got a problem. And you're charged with helping to fix that problem. Okay. In addition, the hours are getting increasingly longer, and I find now, when I speak to attorneys and folks in the profession, because of the pandemic, there's no downtime. They feel like they're available 24/7. The computers are at home, and people are just responding at any hour of the day, which is very difficult. And clients now think that because they have a captive audience and the attorney being home, they can also reach out, throughout the night and the wee hours of the morning. So I want to talk about later the concept of boundaries, because that's going to be something that is going to help most of us, deal with these incredible times. Goes on, judges, clients can be difficult, colleagues can be difficult. And, you can read here that you're going to be challenged on levels that you've never been before. And I'm sure in your practice of law, especially family law, it's also fraught with a lot of emotionality. It's one of the more emotional parts of the practice of law. You're dealing with family issues, children, people's, possessions, and it gets very, very, very highly emotional. And it takes everything from you to kind of retain your your professionalism, and also step away when you can from the emotionality of the case. There's lots of studies that are going on now talking about the mental health in the legal profession. Lawyers have a very, very high rate of depression compared to the rest of the population. Suicidality is also high, anxiety is also high. And again, it's because of the number of factors that I mentioned a moment ago. You're dealing with very emotionally charged situations. You're dealing with high demand, and you add that, following rules and having sometimes little control of how the judge makes a ruling in a case, and then add to the fact that we're dealing with this pandemic. It's a real mix of potential difficulty, which also leads to all these symptoms that we're hearing more and more being reported. we talk about the suicide rate of attorneys. It creeps up and down over time. There's always an ongoing debate whether attorneys are ranked number 1, 2, or 3 to other professions in terms of suicidality. But suicide is really the end result of a person believing in the moment that they don't have any other way out. Oftentimes, a phone call to somebody can prevent that from happening, and yet people feel very, very, have a difficult time saying, I'm having these really dark thoughts. When someone calls the office and I get them on the phone, I do not hang up until I ask that question. And I say it in a way that I don't mean to be insulting or disrespectful, but I need to know if you have any thoughts of taking over what's going on. And I've never heard anyone tell me, what kind of ridiculous question is that, Dr. Weinstein? How dare you ask me? They mostly say, well, I don't have any plans. I thought about it. Sometimes I don't want to wake up in the morning because things are difficult and I just wish it would all go away, but no, I don't have any plans. Or somebody will say, I thought about it and maybe had a previous attempt, but now I have reason to live. I have family, I have friends, I have something that is also going to keep me going, and I'm reaching out because I don't want to go there again. So there's always a progress in terms of anyone's mental health concerns. And as far as something that we can offer as a open to the profession is, if you have any colleagues or any that is acting in a strange way and you might be concerned about their mental health condition, you can certainly have them call us and we can ask that very hard question over time. Or you can basically say, I'm worried about you, like I'm concerned, I see things are going differently. What's going on? You want to talk about what's happening, and hopefully they'll open up. And generally people who are suicidal are going to do it regardless, unfortunately. But talking about and asking the question will not lead someone to say, hey, that's a good idea, I think I'll do that tonight. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of people are concerned about. If I talk about suicide, is that going to make someone do it? And generally speaking, that's not the case. Unfortunately, there's been some high publicity cases. This gentleman, Irvin Gonzalez, who from what I found out was the who's who of attorneys in the South Florida area, and all these accolades and people, he touched many people's lives, had something go on, and he had a very dark place, and he went there, and he ended his life several years ago, which shook the legal profession, especially in South Florida, to the core. And then, so this is what was going on with Mr. Gonzalez. And so for those of you who aren't quite at that level, and hopefully many of you aren't, there is a level of stress that goes on with any practice of law, and especially in the family practice. You're getting people's intimate details of their lives, and you have to manage all that. And I work with a number of family lawyers who have to juggle being a lawyer and being the counselor to their clients, and I hear that often. And it's exhausting on an emotional level for the attorneys, and it sometimes interferes with their ability to work the case, because they have to sometimes just deal with a crisis that has nothing to do with the legal issue in the moment, but they'll get a call from the client saying, I need some help, and oh my God, and what do I do? And they find themselves trying to balance how they deal with those issues. Fortunately, a number of attorneys have ongoing relationships with mental health professionals, and they're smart enough and wise enough at those times saying, hey, I think this is an issue. You can call someone who is better trained to deal with that. I will continue to work on your case, and with that help, I think will help you get through it better. So that's good. But for those of us who are having a hard time in general with stress at work, we come up with some solutions that sometimes work. Exercise is historically one of the best ways of dealing with stress on so many levels. Physiologically, it kicks in the endorphins that help us feel better. But again, now with many of the gyms being closed down because of the pandemic, is a challenge. Those of us who are gym rats, and I can tell you I'm not ever been one of them, they are saying, what do I do without my gym? So we're now being challenged to come up with creative ways of doing things that we took for granted, that we're able to do on a regular basis. We're no longer able to do those regularly. So you see on the internet very clever ideas of how to create weights and make weights. People fortunately are still allowed to go outside and do some aerobic exercises, and there's other ways of dealing with the challenge of not having your gym available to you. Leading a healthy lifestyle, again, we're home more often. Some people find being home more often more difficult to follow a healthy lifestyle. We have all our food, all our snacks available to us. The stress level is getting higher, and it's easy to walk away from our desk right into the kitchen and help ourselves to something, or conversely order something to be delivered to the front door. It's not like having something delivered to the office. So it's always important to keep in mind that we need to keep a healthy lifestyle in terms of nutrition. Um, and we go down the list, taking one thing at a time. That's becoming a bigger challenge than I ever imagined, and I'm hearing more is that people are juggling more while they're working at home. So again, it's management of as project management in addition to time management. And again, we're getting the Superman, Superwoman issues are creeping up even more. And so this time is especially difficult for those of us in a professional light, and especially attorneys right now, because there's added stress and burden to our what was just generally a very stressful profession. We talk about resilience, and this is a term that's getting more and more kind of study right now in the issue of mental health and wellness. Basically, resilience is how can you fight off the effects of stress and challenges that maybe you haven't thought about. And again, the emotional world is one of those things that attorneys, again, are not real versed in. And so a lot of resilience is really developing a emotional intelligence. And some of you might have heard that term. It's how to deal with your emotions on a way that are not going to let them overwhelm you or get in the way. And that's a challenge that many of us have. And that's often a time where working with therapists will help a whole lot, because they can help get that into perspective for you and point out how you may improve your ability to increase your resilience, and especially in the face of high stress and what we're going through now. Again, let's talk about, okay, so I'm stressed. What do I do? How can I get through this? And again, simple things like resting, ability to process your feelings, your thoughts. When you're working remotely, you don't have necessarily the staff around you anymore. And then there are some people who have solo practices who have never been able to process a whole bunch with other staff, with other colleagues in the office. But maybe you had a paralegal or an assistant, and you, at least for a moment, you can touch base with one another. But now working remotely, that's been taken away from us in a lot of ways. So a lot of times it's sitting back and just processing within ourselves. And I would also encourage you, to reach out to a colleague, to take a break and say, hey, I just had a really difficult time. And if you have a friend who's in the profession who can understand what you've been through, take a moment, give a call, or send an email and say, when you get a chance, can I chat with you for a bit, because I just had a very difficult moment. And that's something that is hard to do. Again, reaching out for help and not thinking that you can just take everything on and fix everything all by yourself. Generally, those of us who are in a profession like this are very competent. We're good problem solvers, but sometimes when we're dealing with our own issues, we have a more difficult time. So getting personal support, professional support, talked about, and again, Florida Lawyers Assistance, because our job is to really support you. We're here and we're doing this today to let you know that we want to be a partner in your world and your day-to-day practice if you need us to kind of help you cope with stuff. We have the therapy groups that we offer around the state. We have referrals to individual therapists. We have support groups for substance use issues. We know that you can be affected by all that, and And the way to deal with that is to really be involved or get in contact with someone like us sometimes. And again, as Molly mentioned earlier, the calls are confidential. If you call on your own, we are not obligated, whether we're a lawyer or otherwise, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm a psychologist. We don't report those kind of calls. We'll talk to you and say, okay, what's going on, and we'll hopefully point you in a direction that will help you, get things back in order. Come at this from an employer perspective. I'll give very short acknowledgement. Employers are now starting to understand, if you're working in a firm, that it's important to support the staff on a level that gives them some mental health support, because a better functioning employee is going to ultimately be better for the firm. And then we talked about in more depth how they can establish well-being committees in some of the larger firms. Some firms are embracing this very wholeheartedly, and some are still somewhat reluctant because they're kind of like stuck in an old model of how a lawyer and how a law firm should conduct themselves. We are sensitive to that, but we're also trying to help them understand that in these new times and these new challenges, maybe we can look at things a little differently. Talk about that. Understanding workplace stress, why it matters. Essentially, it's good for business, whether you're a solo practitioner or part of a firm. We're all here to help, but also make money. And if we have, if our mental health is in order, we're generally able to be more successful, which translates into profitability and productivity, and being increased client satisfaction. One of the things that I always remark is that as professionals, we are very selfless sometimes, and many of us are caught in the cycle of being available to our clients too much, and that's to our detriment. And I'll just kind of direct you to a metaphor that for those of us who know about being in an airplane back in the day when flying was safer, that pre-flight instructions that we kind of give maybe half an ear to. They say in the event of a problem or we're over water or something, there's going to be some oxygen masks, dropping from the ceiling. And what I don't understand is why there's always 3 masks over 2 seats. I haven't figured out that dilemma yet. But that being said, I always say, for those adults who are traveling with children or someone in need, grab your mask first, put yours on first, and then put theirs on. And the reason is, if you're able to be okay, you can help the person who can help. Same thing goes with being an attorney. If you recognize that you need to be taken care of and you need help, put your oxygen mask on, reach out for that support so that you can be a better attorney and be better available for the needs of your clients. And that's what I just talked about. And of course, it says it's the right thing to do. We spend at least 50% of our waking lives working. I'm thinking it's more like 70 to 80 nowadays. And if our identity is so wrapped up in being an attorney, and when things don't go well, we don't know how to cope with things, that should be a yellow or red flag to say, hey, I need to reassess my reality and my identity. Let me take care of me first, me the person first, and then I can go back to doing my job the way I was trained. Again, this is the end of the formal presentation, but I want to talk about, in a sense, just an overall sense of what we're doing lately. Since the COVID pandemic, we have opened up our resources to the entire state of Florida, and I run, support groups on Wednesday afternoons, which is starting in about 8 minutes, for any attorney who wants to come online and talk about what it's been like, and those groups are absolutely free of charge, and they're fairly new, but I'm getting a very, very nice response to those groups. We have a pretty decent return rate of attorneys who have found it to be a very useful resource. But in general, FLA is here for your needs. We are an organization that is dedicated to supporting the profession. And the bar relies on us to help attorneys out because they want to protect the public, and a better functioning attorney is going to help the bar protect the public in terms of what could happen. So I'm going to wrap up and say thank you so much. I'm going to ask Molly if we anything else to add to our presentation today.
No, thank you very much, Dr. Weinstein, and thank you all of you for participating. As I said earlier, the PowerPoint will be available. It also has FLA's contact information on it, so please reach out to us anytime. And if you see any of your colleagues struggling, please use us as a resource as well. Even if none of this applies to you, it may apply to one of your partners, one of your associates, one of your fellow attorneys or judges, and we're here to assist. So thank you all, and I hope everyone stays safe and well. Bye. Thank you, Dr. Weinstein.
Thank you, Molly. Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Bye now.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens, as well, for organizing this.